मेरे बेटे को प्यार चाहिए, दे दो, दे दो, प्यार चाहिए, दे दो प्यार है। ओए सिस्टर, भाई मेरे बेटे को प्यार चाहिए, मेरा बेटी का ब्लड आ रहा है, ब्लड नीचे से ब्लड आ रहा है, प्यार चाहिए, दे दो। क्यों नहीं कर सकता, क्यों नहीं कर सकता, क्यों नहीं कर सकता, मेरे को प्यार चाहिए अभी।
Were you that desperate father shouting over the counter asking for medical help for your daughter, or one like him, desperate? Were you one of those on the guest list for a wedding reception that was given amiss by the bride and the groom? India saw hundreds of IndiGo flights cancelled for the past 3 days. Over 2,000 flights were cancelled between December 2nd and December 5th. People slept on the airport floors. Airports looked less like airport and more like markets. A woman could not reach Haridwar to immerse his dad's ashes. A girl in Hyderabad cried because she couldn't fly for medical care. Passengers clueless as what is going on. This was absolute pandemonium, and after all this, suddenly, Government of India tweaks the rules, gives IndiGo a clean sheet. Government bent, everything soon will be over, become normal, crisis will be over soon, people will forget soon. So what? So many people have suffered, they are all Aam Aadmi, who cares? But was this crisis created? Today on NTT, we break it down. Not the propaganda version, not the IndiGo press release version, but the truth. Let's look at the rules formed by DGCA. Not hearsay, not IndiGo's excuses, the actual DGCA norms for passenger safety. And you tell me, which of these are unreasonable? Number 1, weekly rest. The old roster said 36 hours. The new rosters demanded 48 hours in a 7-day cycle. 2 days of off in a week, something every normal job already has. But for pilots who fly at 38,000 feet, somehow this becomes impossible. Impossible for IndiGo. Night duty window. The old roster said could be 0 to 5 hours. The new law demanded 0 to 6 hours. DGCA included the full window of circadian low, the time when human fatigue peaks. This 1 extra hour makes a massive safety difference. The other thing, maximum flight duty per day. The old roster said you can fly 10 to 12 hours. The new roster demanded 10 hours if it overlaps the fatigue danger zone. Think about this. Drivers of trucks and buses have stricter limits than what pilots themselves are getting. DGCA simply brought India closer to global norms of safety. The fourth demand, cumulative duty in 14 days. Old roster demanded 100 hours. The new roster demanded 95 hours. A small cut, a cut by only 5 hours, but crucial. It prevents fatigue from building up over weeks. Rest after night duty is the fifth demand. The old roster said 10 hours. The new roster demanded 12 hours or equal to previous duty time, which means if you had worked 12 hours last night, you need 12 hours of rest following that duty, which is basic human biology. Night landings allowed. The old roster said 6 per roster period. The new demanded 2 because landing is the most critical, most fatigue sensitive part of flying. So fatigue management was the essential concern of the new rule, the new law. The old one said basic compliance. The new one said mandatory predictive fatigue monitoring. That is more like a scientific way of monitoring pilots and their fatigue quotient. For the first time, airlines must use science, real data to track if pilots are dangerously tired. Tell me if this is wrong. And this is what IndiGo said they cannot implement as of now. This is what they said would disrupt operations. This is what required government intervention. These are not luxury demands, these are safety demands. After the deadliest air crash in India's aviation history, one that we saw in June 2025, Air India crash, over 240 passengers died. And if IndiGo had followed this, they would have needed more pilots, more crew, more scheduling flexibility, meaning more cost and less profit. So what's cheaper? Hiring more pilots? Absolutely not. Or cancelling flights for a few days while pressurizing the government? Well, that seems a feasible option. This is not my imagination. This is standard corporate playbook. Create a crisis, make the public suffer, force the regulator to bend, and that's exactly what happened here as well. And DGCA, they bent, they tweaked the rule, they relaxed restrictions, and who benefited? Not you, not the passengers, but IndiGo. Because now IndiGo can run the same schedules with the same staff at the same cost at your risk.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Peter Elbers, the CEO of IndiGo. I, on behalf of all of us at IndiGo, would like to extend our sincerest apologies for the major inconvenience this has caused to many of our customers on account of delays or cancellations. Cancellations were made for today as to align our crew and planes to be where they need to start afresh tomorrow morning. Earlier measures of the last few days regrettably have proven not to be enough. So we've decided today for a reboot of all our systems and schedules, resulting in the highest number of cancellations so far, but imperative for progressive improvements starting as from tomorrow. With these actions, we expect tomorrow to have cancellations below 1,000. The support of DGCA in providing specific FDTL implementation relief is of great help. Still, there's lots of work in progress, but going forward from here, in alignment with the Ministry of Civil Aviation and DGCA, we do expect to further improve every day.
Let's be brutally honest. IndiGo, the India's biggest airline, had 2 years to implement these norms. These rules by DGCA were brought to fore in the month of March 2024, and this is December 2025. But they wanted, or rather I would say they waited until the final deadline and then suddenly declared, we don't have enough rested pilots, thus we cannot operate. I mean, that's not their official statement. The official statement read, a multitude of unforeseen operational challenges, including minor technology glitches, schedule changes linked to winter season, adverse weather conditions, increased congestion in the aviation system, and the implementation of updated crew rostering rules as per flight duty time limitations had a negative compounding impact on our operations in a way that was not feasible to be anticipated, which means they were not ready for these rules which were passed in March 2024, and they were not anticipating a crisis of this kind if they had waited to implement the law to the last deadline. So hundreds of flights were cancelled, not because of fog, not because of weather, but because of bad planning or deliberate planning. IndiGo claims helplessness, but the truth, helplessness was for the passengers, not the airline.
आज यहाँ पे कोई पंगा हो जाए, कुछ प्रॉब्लम हो जाए तो बोल देना उसको। बिल्कुल मजाक ही बना दिया, कोई सुनने वाला ही नहीं है यहाँ पे, कोई तो जवाब दे।
It's funny, the DGCA has now tweaked the rules meant for passenger safety to help IndiGo resume services. And then they said, the exemption granted is to facilitate operations and shall not be seen as dilution of safety requirements. How convenient. Clap, clap, clap. Let's dig deeper. There is something monopolistic about IndiGo. Ask yourself, how did IndiGo reach a point where a single airline could hold an entire country hostage. Because this isn't a one-off situation. IndiGo has a long history of operating like an airline that's bigger than the rules meant to govern it. For example, on Monday, that is coming Monday, December 8, let's take the sample of Delhi-Mumbai route. IndiGo has 22 flights, which is almost like one flight every hour, whereas Akasa has 4 and SpiceJet has 2. IndiGo dominates every sector. Is that a monopoly by design? Did the government allow this monopoly to form? Because when a private airline becomes this big, it can dictate terms to passengers, to the ministry, to DGCA. There's something so funny about airlines these days called dynamic pricing, or in safer terms, or in layman's term, we should be calling it ransom. Every tragedy becomes an opportunity. IndiGo created this mess and now check their flight tickets. This is a mess almost created by them. And even in middle of this crisis, these are the rates. Delhi-Mumbai flight fares are now like 38,000. Kolkata-Delhi, some 25,000 rupees. Delhi-Bangalore, some dynamic fares have been extra dynamic, touched 40,000. So you create crisis and then run an official loot in the name of dynamism. And then DGCA is silent, toothless. After the Air India crash, airfares in Ahmedabad sector shot up in 3 hours. In exactly 3 hours time after the crash, at a time when the entire nation was desperate. People were dying to reach to Ahmedabad so that they can see what's left of their loved ones. Flight tickets were shot up. Who raised it? Who raised it the most? IndiGo. Balasore train tragedy. People desperately trying to reach home. People desperate to reach Orissa, a hospital in Orissa, to find the whereabouts about their loved ones. People were helplessly desperate to take the injured to better hospitals outside Orissa. Which airline jacked up fares first? The answer is IndiGo. Dynamic pricing? No, that's called disaster pricing. When people can't escape your network. It's not pricing, it's looting. And DGCA did nothing to check that. How can they? How can they? Because these are private players. Now BJP went berserk reacting to this post of Rahul Gandhi. What did Rahul Gandhi say? IndiGo fiasco is the cost of this government's monopoly model. He continued by saying that once again, it's ordinary Indians who pay the price in delays, cancellations and helplessness. India deserves fair competition in every sector, not match-fixing monopolies. That's what Rahul Gandhi said. Now find me how many times BJP has reacted on this post. Also find me how many times BJP or its leaders have reacted when the IndiGo crisis was at its peak. Of course, PIB has tweeted, they had issued a statement stating the civil aviation minister has taken serious note and expressed serious displeasure. That's it. That's it. When you know this airline has arm twisted, take action against IndiGo. You know you can't. You have sold off Air India and India does not have a state airline anymore. You can't arrange for aircrafts, can't make the old aircrafts of Jet Airways or any other aircraft lying operational in such a short notice. So, it's better to be silent. And yes, there is silence from the ministry. What does the Civil Aviation Ministry actually control? Because when the entire aviation sector is private, one airline holds the majority share. If the ministry cannot enforce rules made for public safety, then what is the ministry even for? Many say the government has caved in under pressure today before IndiGo to save one airline's schedule. They diluted rules meant to save lives. Well, history repeats itself, not as tragedy, but as a flight cancellation notification this time. And I'm not saying IndiGo is a bad company, but passengers across the country has been held hostage to the crisis and they have been used as a bait to bend government rules. There is no better way of saying this. Thus, the core question: who paid the price? Passengers. As always, passengers. Yes, the issue was raised in the parliament. Many leaders reacted on this. Yet, the passengers suffered. They are the people who suffered. A family with ashes stuck in Hyderabad. A worker scared of losing his job.
मेरे बॉस को संदेश भेज दिया जाए कि मेरे को निकाले ना अभी।
सुबह से बैठा हूँ
सुबह।
मैं भी।
तेरा रोल आएगा।
फ्लाइट इसलिए डिले हुआ क्योंकि इनका कैप्टन ही नहीं आया उड़ाने के लिए।
तो कोई यहाँ जिम्मेदार अधिकारी उपस्थित नहीं है?
चले गए वो तो, यहाँ पे जो थे वो चले गए।
तो अब आप क्या चाहते हैं, आप क्या करेंगे अब?
इनकी बातों पे सर जरा भी भरोसा नहीं है। हर बात पे ये गोलमोल जवाब दे रहे हैं।
Families losing money, missing weddings, surgeries, deadlines. Public suffered. Or was the public made to suffer? Because only when people suffer does pressure build. Only when chaos erupts does the government soften the rules. And only one player benefits. Here in this case, it's IndiGo. Plain, simply said. And the day after the rule was relaxed, I'm sure that day would come very soon. Everything soon will be magically normal. Normal once again. The crisis was not natural, not sudden, not unavoidable. It was man-made, business-made, lobby-made. IndiGo got its exemption. Government got its peace. DGCA saved face. And the passengers will go back to the same airport they have returned from today or yesterday after IndiGo cancelled their flights. Passengers will once again stand in the queue in the same airport and take the same airline, that is IndiGo, because they simply have no other option. That's not a failure of aviation. That's a failure of policy. And until we fix that, IndiGo won't need to hold the public hostage again, because the system is already doing it for them. And in all this, finally, let's also spare a thought for the crew and the ground staff. They were not responsible for these cancellations, but they became the punching bags for an angry nation.
मुंह खोल, 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 मुंह खोल।
These women and men, mostly young, did not make the decisions, but they had to stand there and absorb the outrage for a company that betrayed them too. IndiGo wasn't just unfair to passengers, it was unfair to its own employees who were left to face the fire without support, and IndiGo must answer. Questions will be asked. Jai Hind, Satyameva Jayate.